Hey, we're back with part 2 of the Flat Earth video we were responding to that had 50 scientific reasons for the downfall of modern astronomy, aka the globe Earth. We did 10 points last time. Let's try to shoot for another 10. Let's see what there is in store for us.
11. The river Nile drops but a foot in 1,000 miles. The island of St. Helena can be seen 100 miles at sea. The national flag of a ship can be discerned 15 miles at sea. Most certainly, sir, the sea is a level, said a lifelong mariner at point one day.
Okay, so the Nile River is brought up quite a few times in general by flat earthers because it's a long river that, if you don't understand gravity correctly, may make you think the water is flowing upwards against gravity, which of course is not the case. But Eric seems to be trying to make a different point on the river being mostly flat in its course. And of course, the Earth isn't a perfect sphere. It will have areas that is more rigid, parts that are more curved, and areas that are flatter than the rest. But we say it's a sphere because that's the overall shape it makes. It's similar to your flat Earth model, right? You don't think the Earth is 100% flat throughout, but there are ups and downs. But you believe overall it is flat, no? Same thing applies here. The fact that you had to single out the Nile River as opposed to literally any river out there shows that you are cherry picking. Even if the Nile does appear to be flat water, that doesn't necessarily say anything about the overall shape of the Earth, just like how the existence of mountains doesn't disprove the flat Earth. And it makes sense for rivers to not exactly curve according to the shape of the Earth, because it always has to move downhill, eventually into an ocean. And when that happens, it doesn't necessarily conform to the round shape of the Earth as it does just moving from higher elevation to lower. So you have the wrong image in your head on how rivers behave. Now, another concern flat earthers have is that the water supposedly flows uphill according to the globe model, which is partly a misunderstanding on how gravity works and also an assumption that rivers always flow towards the south, which the Nile does not. But I won't waste everyone's time here, so I'll only talk about it if he happens to bring it up in the other 39 points.
12. To suppose a globular ocean, a globular and revolving Earth, and an Earth full set in the ecliptic or sun's pathway, is a trio of folly, not to be tolerated in the mind of any creature under heaven. Lord slay England's darling sins of ignorance.
Geez, once you bring religion into all of this, you lose all credibility. I mean, actually, you had no credibility to begin with, but now you have negative. I think I've only ever seen one flat earther who was an atheist. Really goes to show how certain false ideas can lead to another, and then another, and then another.
13. Modern astronomy is a suicidal science. For if its hypothesis were put in force, no creature could live 10 minutes.
So he doesn't go on to elaborate this point. I mean, he does have 50 to go through and probably doesn't want to make this video an hour long, but this just strikes me as making claims without evidence. So far, I haven't heard about a single legit reason presented in how the world or life wouldn't work if the Earth were round. Zero, nil, nothing.
14. Nature is never absurd, monstrous, nor ridiculous, nor does it ever arrange for or supply the unnecessary. But the modern astronomers do, and have compelled the press to issue tons of the unnecessary, the absurd, and the ridiculous, have thoroughly humbugged ministers, colleges, schools, platforms, and families in all countries.
What's your evidence for that premise? Why can't nature be absurd, monstrous, or ridiculous? These are subjective words anyway. You can't objectively be absurd, because if you think about it, maybe this all only seems absurd to us in our perspective, but in an objective point of view, it's not. Or a better way to say this is that it seems absurd to some of us, namely you flat earthers, because in everyone else's perspective, it's not absurd at all. Nature can behave however it wants to, and for no reason is there to think that it has to appease your simple brain. The only thing we just need to do is discover what it has in store for us, which is what we did and how modern astronomy came about to begin with. I could easily come up to you and say the opposite. Nature can't possibly be reasonable, forgiving, or illogical. That statement has literally the same weight because neither has any evidence and the claim is just way too general and subjective to hold any real value. Moving on.
15. If ships go out to sea sailing over an orange-shaped ocean, they should as often be seen mountains high above the range of vision, as they are constantly seen hull down, which phenomena is owing entirely to angular vision. Mr. Keith says we can only see distinct for 3 miles. By telescope, the ship will appear again as on a sheet of glass. I have proved this by the Nab lightship.
Okay, let's turn it around for just a second. If the Earth were flat, then you wouldn't just be able to pull the ships back into view. You'd be able to see much, much further since there's no ground to obstruct your vision. There's a reason you can't see Mount Everest in most parts of the world.
16. The Earth is the largest body with a solid crust in the universe. The stability of the Earth is due to the immobility of matter, unless acted upon by some exterior force for a given period. If the Earth were anything but an irregular plane, the Jews must have known it. As their scientific knowledge was direct from God through Moses, Daniel declares that the greatest of the kingdom of the universe is under the whole heaven, not above it. The ancient Jews always considered the earth as a plane. They would laugh at our astronomers.
Excuse me, but again you made a false premise that the Earth must be solid and stationary and due to the immobility of matter. We have an example right in front of us that already disproves you, and that's the existence of earthquakes. It's a phenomenon that you absolutely cannot deny exists, and it's caused by plate tectonics below our feet. If you don't believe in earthquakes, then that's a different discussion we'll need to have another time. Anyway, earthquakes, and volcanoes for that matter, are caused by plate tectonics sliding and bumping into each other. So that's a clear example of the crust of the Earth moving and not being stationary, moving about 0.6 inches per year. Ugh, I just used inches. Anyway, regarding the Jews knowing about the shape of the Earth, come on, can we stop referring to ancient people and think they know everything? People who lived thousands of years ago didn't even know the basics of basic science, much less the shape of the Earth. I won't go into much more of that. I'd rather believe in a group of scientists that have gone through years and years of testing, observing, and studying, rather than people who lived thousands of years ago.
17. Mr. Keith says the voyages of circumnavigators as Cook, Anson, and Drake have been frequently adduced by writers in geography to prove that the Earth is a sphere. But when we reflect that all of them sailed westward, and not northward or southward, it is evident that they might have performed the same voyages had the Earth been in the form of a drum, or cylinder, which it is.
You know, this is something I've never really asked flat earthers, but if you're moving from east to west or west to east, you essentially have to move in a curve. You're constantly turning, so when you're riding a plane across continents, why is it that you're not constantly tilting from the plane being constantly turning? Please explain that to me.
18. Navigation is the art of directing a course or ascertaining a position, when there are no landmarks, by means of objects external to the Earth, as the stars, etc., also by taking a meridian altitude of the sun by a simple addition or subtraction. Mariners would not trust to artificial globes, but to charts as flat as the surface of the sea.
We're able to use the sun or the North Star to navigate in the past because those are celestial objects that do not move in our perspective. We're always moving in the solar system, but when everything else moves along with you, or if they're incredibly far away, they will appear stationary. Now, that being said, we don't use such barbaric methods anymore for navigation. Now we just have GPSs. So question, how do flat earthers think GPSs work? They're information provided by satellites that orbit around the Earth. So how do flat earthers think it works? Do we have satellites that just float in the sky, somehow having infinite energy to maintain its height? How exactly do they think this works?
19. The foundation of modern astronomy rests on the fiat of Sir Isaac Newton, quote, "The sun is the center of the solar system and immovable."
No, we're not going to just reference someone and think that all of modern astronomy is based off that one person's beliefs. You can debunk as many historical figures as you want, but that won't leave a dent on the science we have today. Also, Newton never outright believed the sun is the center, but rather that everything, including the Earth and the sun, are the center of the world. You can interpret this world however you want, but he believed in an infinitely sized universe in which nothing is really the center, or that all are the center. So as a result, there really isn't a center of the solar system either. Anyway, the point is, let's stop talking about what certain people believe, but rather what the model is in modern times.
20. All astronomers now declare the constant revolution of the sun through the circuit of the heavens and the 12 signs of the zodiac.
No astronomer believes that. Thanks for strawmanning though, it makes my job a lot easier. Anyway, that's the next 20, quote, facts. Thank you to Fireshard, Alan Morton, Miss Fixit, and Edward Martin. I'll see you later for part 3.